This is the Benefits Buzz Podcast, your weekly pulse on what's happening in the world of employee benefits. Brought to you by your friends at WEX, who believe in simplifying benefits for everyone. Now listen up and let's get buzzed! Hey, hello everyone. It's another episode of Benefits Buzz. I'm your host, Eric Piella, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Kelsey Burgad. Kelsey, we have got another fun. I feel like we say that every week, but every week we just seem to elevate the fun and the excitement on these episodes. And this week is just like all the other awesome episodes we've done. Most importantly, because what are we talking about? Open enrollment, everyone's favorite time of the year.
This is one of our hot topics. I feel like every time we talk about open enrollment, we just get way more downloads and viewers. So stick with us. It's going to be worth it. I know it.
We do, and we're getting close to be done with season 5. And if you loved this year's season, if you love these episodes, we would ask that you give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Apple Music. That is the best way, number one way for us to get discovered by other HR pros like yourself who are listening in. So we would thank you for that if you are enjoying the show. With that, let's talk about open enrollment. Dang it, Kelsey. It is a hot topic, and as we approach the season, we feel like every year there's another hurdle for HR pros to have to deal with. And what is this year? Oh, let's throw a little inflation and semi-recession on our plate while we do it, right? So what does that mean? It means open enrollment is as important forever for employees as they choose their benefits. And so to talk about all the ways to make open enrollment engaging and educational and make sure they're making the right decisions, we've got a great guest. Her name is Liz Hill, and she's an account executive here at WEX. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. And you're right. I mean, now, like open enrollment, we refer to this as really our Super Bowl, right? Happens once a year. We're either planning for open enrollment, in open enrollment, on the backside of open enrollment. So like we're right there right now.
That is a great analogy. I love that.
I know. And the thing is too, like the funny thing is it's like we always say it's open enrollment season, but everyone who is in open enrollment knows that it should be like a year-round thing. Like you said, either you're preparing for it or you're going through it or you've just done with it and you're trying to figure out what you learned and how to, make it better for next year. But let's dive into this, Liz. I mean, I feel like this is a bit of a no-brainer question to start, but we're gonna ease into this, right? So we know the importance of open enrollment. You and everyone else in the HR world goes through all this work of making sure there's a great repertoire of benefits for employees to choose from. But you go through all that work, you have to make sure it's a good experience. So why is it so important to have a really good open enrollment experience for your employees?
Right. Well, I mean, it gets to that point where you really have one shot to get it right. Right. Employers spend millions and millions of dollars on these benefits, and the enrollment experience and the process by which employees are making their selections really can shape their perception about the benefit package. Right. So, you're spending, as an employer, spending so much money on these benefits, you want it to be, it's really important. It's critical that it be a smooth, positive experience because that really shapes the perception.
That is so true. And if you think about it, I mean, perception is reality, right? So if they go through that experience and they're like, oh, this was not good, they might be on the job hunt thinking like, I can get a better benefits package somewhere else. So it really is pivotal. Speaking of how important that is, and Eric mentioned that, we're going through, yet another thing for HR pros to deal with. There was ARPA and all the COBRA subsidy stuff. And now here we are with inflation. Do you think that should change how employers approach open enrollment? Or is it just another year?
Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily changes, but what I'm hearing from the employers that I talk to, there's not a person out there who hasn't experienced, the increased price in gas, the increased price in groceries, right? So I think the employers that I am talking to are hoping and thinking that it might be a huge opportunity this year to really increase engagement from employees, right? The reality of it is that everyone's a little bit more price sensitive and cost conscious right now, right? So I think the hope is that employees will be paying a little bit more attention, right? So if perhaps historically, you've been that person who has just said, okay, I'm just going to keep what I had. I'm in the PPO. I'm just going to roll things over. Maybe this is the year that you stop and say, hey, maybe I should think about the high deductible HSA plan, right? Maybe I should stop and really do the math and think about if a different plan might make more sense to me.
Yeah, preach it, Liz. That's great. I think it's so easy. And when I think last year we won around HSA Day event, we talked about like the average person takes between 15 and 18 minutes, to choose their benefits. And you think about think about that. We used to joke, it's like that's how long it takes me to choose my next Netflix show. And so I think the importance of that is super important. Now, I have a question for you. So I like your comment on the inflation thing, and I think it tees up the thought around like expectations for this year, right? I think when the pandemic hit and everyone moved this open enrollment online, at least most employers that we've talked to moved online. So that's kind of done. And hopefully people have that whole new online experience like down. But if they don't, that's a point of emphasis for sure. But what do you think HR leaders are? What are they hoping the experience looks like? And what are you hearing, from employees? Like, what are they hoping to experience? Is anything changing? Are there anything that they should elevate? Just you work with so many organizations. I just love to get your vibe for what you're hearing, sort of, ear to the track, if you will.
Yeah, sure. I would say one thing that we're hearing a lot of interest in this year is decision support tools, right? So if you're able to kind of get that engagement from employees, they need the tools by which to evaluate their different benefit offerings. So for example, the clients that we work with, we have a decision support tool that we provide, and it enables employees to enter a little bit of indicative data about how they use their benefits and get a true comparison, like medical plan to medical plan. It helps them kind of do the math, if you will, on, for example, a difference between a PPO and an HSA, and then helps them think about how much money they might want to put in an HSA and or a FSA or a limited purpose FSA. So I think a lot of interest in decision support tools. I would say the other tools, communication is so key, right? I mean, can't say it enough. Communication to employees about annual enrollments happening. You can't just send one email and expect that everyone's going to get it, right? You have to constantly continue to communicate what the changes are, communicate the window. And one of the ways that we also help clients, for example, is we can help support with emails, we can help support with texts. So really being methodical and thinking through your communication strategy, I think, is really important.
That is so cool. I mean, just the text message thing alone, right? Because if you think about today, how many people want to sit at their computer after a long day of work, and go through their open enrollment? So being able to like get a reminder on your phone, like, hey, you should, look at your options or try out this decision support tool to see, what benefit plan is best for you. I mean, I think that's a huge step in the right direction. If employers aren't leveraging that, they probably should be. I mean, I think about myself, I will answer a text message immediately, but those emails, I'm like, I'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Go
interesting. I
ahead, Liz,
mean,
sorry.
so I would also say though, like, don't discard some of the old school tactics too. I think you really have to understand your demographics. So for example, oftentimes the healthcare decision maker is not maybe necessarily the employee. Right. So if you're sending 100% of your communications through work email to the participant, but perhaps there's a spouse at home who might be the person who's really the healthcare decision maker, taking the kids to the doctor, you need to be able to engage that person as well. So, certainly I would not discard, the good old postcard, the reminder, the reminder postcard, hey, annual enrollment's happening, with links to drive people online. So just something else to think about as you're planning your communication strategy.
That's a good idea. I was just going to ask you, how do you get in front of those individuals outside of, the work email and the text message, but the postcard is a great idea too. So what are some top things that, those employers should do in preparation for open enrollment this year?
Yeah, I would say so. We've talked a little bit about communications. I would also say this is the time of year that you really want to be making sure that you're locking down any of those final plan design changes. For all of our clients right now, we have full project plans. We have annual enrollment dates firmly established, right? I think it's really important that, depending on if you do your enrollment yourself, if you're working with a benefits administrative partner, I think planning is really key, right? Because the person and the entity that's doing the enrollment, you want to make sure we have enough time to be planful, configure the system, make sure we can fully test it out, and that's going to ensure the best experience, right? So this is really kind of that time of year where you should be locking in those changes. Are you going to have a new health plan? Are rates changing, right? I would say those are the two critical things that right now at this time of year you want to be making sure you're starting to solidify.
Yeah, lots of good suggestions. I'm gonna play the devil's advocate and be like, what shouldn't people be doing right now? You're like, maybe, like we always like hear what you should do, but I always like to ask, what shouldn't they be doing? I know it's kind of a tricky question, but anything that come to mind is like a don't do that.
Yeah, I would say a couple things. I would say be very intentional with your enrollment windows, right? So right now, we lock in our clients' enrollment windows pretty early, honestly. But I would say, it's important for you to think about, I think employers think, oh, well, we recommend 2 weeks, for example. I think employers sometimes think, well, gee, I can't get everyone through that. Maybe I'll add 3 or 4. But the reality of it is we're all procrastinators by nature, right? And so I will tell you, regardless of the amount of time, 30 to, somewhere between 30 and 40% of your population is going to wait to the last 2 to 3 days anyway, right? So sometimes a longer window is not necessarily better. So I would just encourage you to be kind of intentional about that. I would also say, really think through what happens when someone misses it, right? So many of our clients will have kind of a silent period, right? Maybe the week or 2 after enrollment closes to, establish, hey, can we go ahead if someone misses it? Are we able to let them make a late change? Just really, you will be better off to think through that process proactively up front, as opposed to just kind of waiting for it to happen, right?
That's a trick of the trade.
Yeah,
I
There
didn't
will-
know that was a thing, and I don't feel like I should be allowed to know that was a
I
thing.
know, like the fake, like it closes. Oh my goodness, I love
super
that.
secret.
The secrets of open enrollment exposed.
but you have to, I would not recommend you let that go on until the end of the year, because
Right.
guess what? Like 1st of December is when those carrier files are being sent, right? And so if you're not on the carrier file, you're not going to have an ID card come January 1. So, but again, I think just really thinking through operationally these types of things, I would encourage you to do, as opposed to just kind of making it up as it happens, right? Because there will be people that will be late, right? And so you want to be tight with your benefits administration partner on kind of, what the rules of the road are, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, Eric and I joke about it because we're probably both that 40% that'll wait until the last day or
Oh,
two,
yeah.
more than likely. But I mean, that is so smart to have a contingency plan, because
Right.
know there's always going to be the few people who say, I didn't get the email, or, I was on vacation, or, what have you. So such a smart idea to have that silent window where you're not promoting it, but if something happens, you do have that backup plan to help that employee out. You did talk a little bit about decision support, and I'm a huge fan of decision support tools. I love a good quiz, whether it's a personality quiz or whatever it is. So I love doing those types of things when I'm picking my own health plans. But I'm just curious, like, what other tools can HR professionals lean on when it comes to open enrollment to help employees make good decisions?
Yeah, I would say, we talked about utilizing all your different communication vehicles, right? A multifaceted communication strategy. I would also say, so for example, for our clients, we have a chat bot, right? So not meant to replace a person, but yet another kind of decision support while on the benefits site. There's certainly also our call centers, right? So that's a very, very big element of our offering. We staff up significantly for annual enrollment. Again, it's the Super Bowl. We start hiring in June, honestly. So we already have folks in training and, getting ready, because, let's face it, you guys, benefits are confusing, right? And so we're seeing a lot more voluntary benefits, right? Things like critical illness, accident, kind of supplemental medical plans. And so the more employers continue to kind of layer on and layer on and layer on, there's a lot for employees to try to wrap their head around, understand, and consume. So between kind of the chatbot and sometimes, you want a person to talk to and talk you through that, right? And that's why the service center is a very big component of the offering that we offer our clients, for example.
Yeah, great suggestions. Those are all great. And hopefully everyone is listening is thinking, yep, yep, check, check, check. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. We love like Kelsey and I have joked we wanted to start a section of the podcast called Hot Goss with Hayden, where we talk about like all the latest trends. It never got off the ground yet. We're waiting. Hayden's our producer who's not on the show, but he filled in for a while. But we love trends here. And so we actually just published a benefits trends report, WEX did. And so one of the things that I'd love to hear from you is what do you think is going to be, if you could look into your crystal ball, is what do you think is going to be trending when it comes to employee benefits this year? Anything that you've got a good feeling for?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about voluntary benefits are very big right now, right? So I would say 3 years ago, maybe I had a handful of clients that had plans like critical illness, accident, hospital indemnity. Now I would say it's unusual to have a client who doesn't have some of those things. I would also say that we are continuing to see a lot of interest in things like lifestyle benefits, right? Again, just this is a tough employment market, right? So employers are looking for other ways to continue to enrich in the benefit package and continue to attract and retain talent. So those lifestyle accounts where you provide kind of a pocket, a pool of money, if you will, that employees can use on things like fitness center memberships, home gym equipment, massages, pet sitting in some cases, depending on how the employer defines it. So we're seeing a lot of interest in that as well this year.
No, good call. And it's a great way. Again, I think, Kelsey, you mentioned it, right? Employers are looking for any means possible to remain attractive to their employees when it comes to keeping them retention. And I think benefits are one, and I would agree. The lifestyle spending accounts have been, we've seen definitely an uptick in that. So great point, Liz. What about challenges? Anything? Oh, we already talked about some of them, but
Everything has been a challenge in the
I
last 3 years.
know.
Can it not be easy?
Am I supposed to reposition those as opportunities? I think is another thing that you do in work culture. Challenges, I mean, opportunities do you see for open enrollment this season?
Yeah, I would say there are some, I'll say more like there may be more gotchas, right? There are things that are present every year that, again, if you can get ahead of it and be planful about. So for example, dual year enrollment, right? So the person who has a baby who is, does a life event in December, right? How do we make sure that that baby then is on coverage for the next calendar year, right? Some of those dual year situations. And again, this kind of goes back to planning. I would say another area from an administrative perspective that you want to be taking a look at is your evidence of insurability rules, right? So perhaps last year you introduced a new life insurance carrier. They, the barn door was kind of wide open for people to elect, but this year, chances are you probably have some evidence of insurability requirements. So again, just annual enrollment's that time of year where you want to be really looking at all your plan provisions, making sure you have all of the correct administrative rules set up, right? So I think a lot of paying attention to those little details, I think, are really key, because those are the things that, you won't know about until probably the first quarter next year if they didn't go well, right? So now's the time to kind of get it right. You've got one shot to get it right.
That is such a trend I think we've heard, especially now, hosting the podcast for a few years. It seems like the more you can pay attention to the little details and plan ahead, especially when it comes to open enrollment, just sets you up in the future. And you're giving a lot of very tactical advice that I think can help these HR professionals as they plan out for open enrollment. And they're probably maybe even like in the thick of it already. So such
Right.
great advice. But you've given us so much already. I just have to know if there is like one thing that you have left to give. What is it? Like, what's one thing they should absolutely not go without this year when it comes to OE?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it all kind of comes back to communicate early and often, right? In lots of different vehicles and ways and shapes, right? And have a really good, tight, proactive relationship with your benefit enrollment partner, right? So, a good example is, hey, don't send a communication on Monday, because every call center, there's not a call center in the world that's not busy on a Monday. So, it's just really being very planful about these things. The right hand understands what the left hand's, doing, so that we can really ensure the best possible employee experience this annual enrollment.
I love it. Great advice, Liz. Podcast gold right there. I appreciate all of your wonderful advice. And I almost made it through the entire episode without commenting on your beautiful portrait painting in the background. As a North Dakota kid, I love the cow there. It's very beautiful. Did you paint that yourself?
No, that would be Kirkland's. So, truth be told, so I brought a little bit of Texas with me. I moved to North Carolina about a year ago, and so that's Bessie.
You should have told him you painted it.
Yeah,
you
no.
totally could have fooled me.
You too can obtain one from Kirkland's.
I painted mine too, Liz. No, this is great. Well, sorry to diverge at the end there. I just thought I love that. I promise I was paying attention to you and wasn't looking at the gal the whole time. Well, what a great conversation. Sorry for those who are just listening. You're going to check out the video version. Thank you so much, Liz. Great episode. We love it. Great advice. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Take care. WEX is in the business of simplifying benefits for everyone. Now, although we certainly hope our podcast sparks some aha moments, like that was pretty cool, but of course we cannot provide legal, investment, or financial advice. And, well, therefore, nothing shared in this podcast should be interpreted as such. We encourage you to seek out appropriate professional advice regarding your plans. Hey, congratulations! You made it through our disclaimer. Thanks for listening.